Oh no.
Are you on the local Wi-Fi?
Pretty good. Awesome. Hey everybody, I'm Jonathan Fields, and this is Mark Manson. We're hanging out, having a conversation about, in various ways and approaches, living well on the planet. Mark is the author of a super cool book.
The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, a counterintuitive approach to living a good life.
And I'm the author of a moderately cool book, How to Live a Good Life, Soulful Stories, Surprising Science, and Practical Wisdom. But we're not really going to talk about the book today. We just kind of want to bat around some ideas. And so why don't we dive right into it?
Sure.
So I have a fascination.
Okay.
Can I start?
Yeah, go for it.
If you talk to the average person on the street and you ask them, so what does it mean to live a good life? Like what the first words that pop up in your top three, because I know you've had maybe you haven't phrased it that
Sure.
way. What are the top three that you think come up in conversation in people's minds?
Success, happiness, security, maybe?
Okay. Can we deconstruct those three?
I think success, people generally assume success, achieving your goals, financial stability, financial independence. Happiness is probably just feeling good, having good relationships. And then security is like not being in danger. Being healthy and not being in danger, I would say.
All right, so of those three, what do you think is real? And what do you think is total illusion? Or where on the spectrum between like this is legit really, really important versus this is complete fallacy that we just couldn't like tell ourselves?
So I think the success piece, and it's funny because this is one of the big central themes of my book.
Yeah.
I think the success theme is like 90% fallacy, but it's not because it's not important. It's because it's all in our heads. Like so we decide what success is. We are always choosing to define what success is for ourselves. So I think a lot of what people perceive as like having a good, successful life is just this illusion that they're chasing in their minds. I would say the love, happiness stuff is fundamentally important. Maybe the most important. Well, let me say the health and security thing is like it's a bare minimum thing. Like it's
like the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah, it's like if you don't have it, nothing else matters. But if you have it, it's necessary but not sufficient in and of itself.
Okay, so it's funny because if I think about those three things, success, happiness, and security, to me, security is complete and utter illusion.
That's interesting.
That we chase after. And I think actually if I change what I mean by security, you'll be in agreement. So
okay.
like if security is defined as certainty, which I
Right.
think for most people it is.
Right.
And certainty is the one thing I'm 100% certain I can never have.
Right.
And we spend our entire lives chasing it.
Yeah.
That is like the definition of suffering.
Yeah.
Rather than, like a good life. So yet we still,
I like that.
I strive after it.
Yeah.
I'm a dad, I'm a husband. Like, I want to lock down the future as much as possible in
Yeah.
the name of like creating a safe place for my kid.
Right.
We're just wired to want it.
Yeah, I definitely, so maybe we could like separate those out because physical health is, I think, probably, like if you've got some sort of illness or disease, I think that's always going to like take precedence over everything else. But yeah, that illusion, that feeling, I agree with you, that feeling of certainty and security that everything's going to be okay, everything's under control. I agree that is an illusion, and what's interesting now that I think about it, it's definitely an illusion because you get a lot of people who live in incredible security, like people in the United States who like live in nice suburbs and safe neighborhoods and have like really nice, secure lives, and they think like the apocalypse is about to come, and like they're running out and like buying 50 guns and putting like canned food in the basement, and so yeah, it is a mental thing. Whereas you have people. I mean, we've both traveled a lot, so like you can go to certain countries that are statistically far less safe, yet people walk around with a lot more comfort. So I think I agree with that.
Yeah, and I mean also, so you're talking about in the context of actual physical safety, basically, which I think, I agree with. The more we feel physically safe, the more we're okay in the world. But I think like the day-to-day experience, I'm curious what you think of this. My sense is that the day-to-day experience of the quest for certainty or security is less about that, because I think most of us do assume, at least in the Western world, that we're pretty okay. To me, it's more about like I want to lock down my work and my finances and make sure everything's going to be okay. So then we come into but then it all gets blown up because people devote decades of their lives in the name of building like a mountain of quote security, aka cash. And stock portfolios and stuff like this, and they sacrifice so many of the things that actually do nourish them in the name of hitting that point of enough. And then, October 2008 hits. And all of a sudden everything goes down the tubes, and they're like, well, that didn't work the way I thought it did.
It's funny. I have a friend who he's incredibly financially successful. And I've known him for a long time, so I knew him back when he was moderately financially successful, and he was extremely driven. He wanted to make a lot of money. He had his own business. He was working on the internet, and I've basically watched his career grow over the years, and he's never lost that drive, but that drive, it's not coming from a place of passion. It's coming from a place of anxiety about exactly what you're talking about. So when he was making a couple $100,000 a year, he was like, well, if I can get to $1 million, then everything will be okay. And then he got to $1 million, and he's like, well, I think I need a few million. And then he got to a few million, and he's like, well, maybe I need 8 figures. And it's just the only thing that's actually true the entire time is his discomfort with his own situation. Meanwhile, his financial situation is completely different.
Right. It's like the answer is like, well, how much is enough? And the answer is always like, just a little bit more, like no matter what you get.
It's funny, I wrote that I wrote an article at one point, and I said something like that. I was like, when is it ever enough? And one of my readers replied, he was like, enough is never enough. It's like, even enough is not enough. There's always something, some sense that something is missing, something that needs to be
This
changed.
brings up something else that I've been really curious about lately, which is there a constructive value to discontent?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's why. I mean, if you look at human psychology, it really seems as though we're kind of wired to be slightly unsatisfied at any given time.
If you live in New York, that changed slightly to
to extremely dissatisfied in certain moments.
Colors all black.
Yeah. I came by the subway today. There was extreme dissatisfaction at points, and I think at least I buy into the simple evolutionary explanation of like a satisfied creature isn't going to adapt. It's going to get eaten at some point. It's that slightly paranoid, slightly insecure, slightly unsatisfied creature that is always thinking, what can I do better? What can I do more? What can I work on that's going to make me safer, more secure, my kids more secure? And so to a certain extent, I feel like, and this kind of gets into, I always feel like Mr. Doom and Gloom when I talk about this stuff, because so much of our industry is just about happiness all the time. But I feel like in a certain way we're damned to be this way, and we're never going to get rid of it. And so the real question is, how do we manage it? How do we manage it within ourselves? How do we be realistic about it?
Yeah. How do we potentially harness it also?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's like you said, discontent fuels all progress.
Yeah.
Because if we were all just if we're completely 100% content all the time, the net effect of that is complacency.
Yeah.
Then we're all just kind of like, things are good.
Yeah.
And then, like everything, all progress stops.
Yeah.
And what's the effect of that on a human? So maybe on a day-to-day basis, we're kind of like a little more chill.
Yeah.
But if you look at any field where progress has really made a positive impact on the human condition,
yeah,
it's an outgrowth on some level of anywhere from moderate to extraordinary discontent.
Yeah.
My sense is that discontent is a good thing if it's coupled with gratitude. That if discontent fuels the quest for growth.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not also coupled with gratitude for what you have now on some level, like that is just pure neuroses and anxiety.
Right.
But if you have those two bundled together, I think it's really powerful.
It's an interesting combination. I like that a lot. Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I think if you just have gratitude without the discontent, you're delusional. You're off in la la land, basically.
Right.
And you're not really affecting things positively around you.
Yeah, I think they're sort of like these, like things that work really beautifully together when they coexist.
Yeah.
But if you have one or the other, they can both take you dark side or light side, not realizing that it's actually a veil for dark side.
Yeah. One thing, so changing gears really quick.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so one thing that's really cool about our books is that, so yours is called How to Live a Good Life. My subtitle is A Counterintuitive Approach to Living a Good Life, which is a nice little synchronicity. And the funny thing is, and we just met a few months ago, and the amazing thing, I don't think we disagree. Like I was really blown away when we did our talk for your show, because it just seemed like we were on the same page from the first moment. And so we have these like seemingly opposite facing books and messages, and not only that, but it's your approach in your book. So my book, it's principle based. It's very theoretical. It's all about mindsets and perspectives, and there's no exercise. There's no like go do this, and people actually the biggest criticism I'm getting about my book is that there's not any of that. Like people email me, they're like, well, what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah.
And you took the complete opposite approach.
Yeah, mine's like an operating manual.
Yeah, yours is like every section. And it's almost like I almost should just be like, okay, yeah, it's seriously like, okay, finish mine, go read Jonathan's now. He'll tell you like what to actually do in the morning, And I just think it's cool. Like one thing that I've noticed about being in this industry for a long time is that everybody's is kind of talking about the same thing. It's just that we all come at it from completely different angles. Yeah. So I guess my question to you, so the reason mine is so theoretical and like principle based is just because I like to nerd out about philosophical stuff, and I've never been the type of guy who like opens a book and is like, oh, I need to do this every morning and I need to do these 5 things. So what inspired your approach to your book? Is that are you like that? Are you?
No, a lot of pain and suffering. Because I'm wired very similarly to you.
Yeah.
I take a strengths assessment, and my number one strength always comes up as some form of love of learning.
Okay.
And I'm an autodidact, so I'll vanish into books and like documentaries, and I'll find teachers and just devour knowledge. And I love going into deep philosophy and ideas. And that's where I spent a lot of my time. And my last book was very much like that.
Okay.
Because that's what I enjoy. And so when I started working on this one, I started doing that again. And I wrote a book that was like deeply principled, deep dive, nuance based. Like where does like faith and spirituality meet science and all this other stuff. And I handed in the first manuscript to my publisher.
And they hated it.
Dude, this isn't it. Like, really?
Really?
So we had like a coming to God moment, and we had a conversation. I'm like, okay, so I think I get it.
Yeah.
I went back. I rewrote a second version, entire second manuscript. Handed it back in. I'm like, okay, I feel pretty good. Wait a couple weeks. This isn't it either. And we don't know what to tell you.
Oh,
and I'm like, oh,
this is brutal.
This is really, really bad. What I realized was that my job in writing this was not to write that kind of book.
Yeah.
That's an interesting book for me.
Right.
But what I was trying to do here, and what the publisher was pushing me to do, was to write something where my reader actually didn't have to do any of the work to understand.
Yeah.
We were working on the assumption that my reader was not the person who was just a massive philosophy geek like I am.
Yeah.
we wanted to create something where it was so simple, where you could understand the ideas in the blink of an eye, you'd remember it for life, and then you could turn around and it would immediately guide your behavior.
Yeah.
And which is a profoundly different book than I'm used to writing.
Yeah.
So the first question for me was, okay, once I understood that, I'm like, am I okay writing that book?
Yeah.
And I went out and I read a whole bunch of books that are written that way, and I was like, well, this is what I think it would look like if I did it. And they're like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And they said, before I actually say yes to this, let me write the first 4 chapters or so to see if I'm okay writing it. And I wrote them, and I'm like, I'm actually really okay writing this.
Yeah.
And from there, it started to tumble out much more easily. And then what became like the central, like the driving force, was to write to people who were mostly in the middle years of their lives, which is me, where there's a million things going on in our lives. There's a high level of discontent and unhappiness, lack of fulfillment, disconnection with both yourself, your own identity, and other people. You're driven by pace, and you feel like you would really love to figure out what would make a difference, but you also feel like you don't want to add to the burden of what you already have going on your plate. You don't want to have to work just to figure out what to do. Like, you're willing to actually do it if you can sort of have it given to you.
Yeah.
So you don't want to have to work to figure it out and then have to work again to do it.
No.
So the goal became like, can I write that book?
Yeah.
And it was hard to do.
Did you feel like it was easier or harder than?
It was harder to get going.
Yeah.
Once I got going, it was
just
so
came
much
out.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everything is short and sweet. You can cherry pick your way through the book, which is similar to your book after like the first part of it.
Yeah.
You can kind of dive in, and so it's interesting. Like it's actually like these two as a bundle, I think is.
I was thinking about that on the way here. I was like, they actually go really well together.
Just from a deeper philosophy and like an ideology and an ethos standpoint, they're really closely aligned.
Well,
we both draw from Eastern philosophy, a lot from positive psychology, a lot.
Well, and what I liked about yours was, because there's so many self-help books out there that I feel like they're just giving exercises just to make it feel like the reader's doing something. Like it's just kind of like, oh, here's something that'll make you feel good for 10 minutes. Like, have fun now, And it's like, yours was actually like, no, there's research about this, like this actually helps people, and it's pretty simple, and you can implement it right now.
Yeah, and also I'm straightforward about the fact, and you are with this also, that in my mind, a good life isn't an exercise, and it's also not a place that you magically get to and then you're good. Yeah, it's a practice.
Yeah,
it's just a daily practice, and it builds over weeks and months and years, and which is really similar to the way that you look at it.
I had a friend of mine. He referred to it as mental hygiene. He said, in the same way that you brush your teeth every morning and take a shower every day, there's certain psychological things you need to do for yourself every day, and you're not going to arrive at this amazing place, and feel great for all time. It's just like you're keeping your stuff in order.
So that makes so much sense to me. I think it makes so much sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think stops people from approaching life that way?
I think 2 things. One is, so the first is that it's so much sexier to hear that there's like this one solution. I think there's a certain part of us that's always looking for that one thing.
Yeah, the magic bullet.
The magic bullet is going to fix everything. Like there's just something innately desirable about that in all of us. So I think that's part of it. And then 2, I think most of the people who end up coming to books like ours, or coming to just personal development in general, they're usually coming because something really painful just happened.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, they just got divorced, or somebody just died, or they found out horrible news. And so their immediate concern is, take this pain away. Like, what can I do to take this pain away?
It's like an intervention.
Yeah, and so I don't think they're as immediately receptive to, I think as time goes on, and they learn more and they understand more, they're more receptive to this idea of it being a practice and something that you work on. But I think to this day, like, my site is covered, and all the stuff we're talking about, it's like beginning to end, my site talks about this. He's like, the pain is constant, nothing's going to fix it permanently, all this stuff is a practice. And I'd say still 50% of the emails I get is, my wife just told me she wants a divorce. I'm destroyed. Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, people want, and you can't blame. I mean, look, we all want that when we're in the moment of
Yeah.
this profound stuff, and we're like, just make it stop.
Yeah.
Please make it stop.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why there's, I think, so much self-medication
Yeah?
through substance abuse and whatever people choose, like whatever road they go down.
Yeah.
You know, but it's also, it's what's interesting to me, if you zoom the lens out and you look at the mainstream health and fitness and diet industry, they understand the psychology too. And a lot of the programming is built around, like, it's 2 stages, and this could either be really good or it could be really bad. Whereas, like, stage 1 is the quick result stage.
Yeah.
So there's always, like, anywhere from, like, a 7-day to, like, a, you know, like, 2-week, you know, like, drop 10 pounds in the first 14 days.
Yeah, yeah.
Because just to kind of get people feeling like, okay, I'm out of a little bit of that pain and I've got a little bit of momentum.
Yeah.
And then, but I think the transition into, okay, now this has to become the mental hygiene, the physical hygiene,
Yeah.
like the daily practice for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That's where people fail.
Yeah.
And that to me, that's the big puzzle. That's the
Yeah.
fascination for me.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody's completely solved that in any industry.
You know, it's interesting. I've talked to a lot of people about this. And BJ Fogg is doing some really interesting work at Stanford on sort of how to get people to take tiny steps
Yeah.
that become sustained actions. And he has a theory where he said basically he splits behavior change into 3 different lengths. It's
Yeah.
like there's a spot, which means like you do it once.
Yeah.
Motivation to get somebody to do something once, pretty easy.
Yeah.
Then he calls it span, which is like, you know, for a month. You know, so stop smoking for a month or stop eating chocolate for a week.
Yeah.
You know, the motivation to get someone to do that is harder,
Yeah.
but it's doable. And it's not just motivation, it's making changes in your environment to make
Yeah.
it also change your ability so that you can
Yeah.
do it too. Then if you tell somebody, like, do this for life, that's where,
Everybody jumps off.
yeah, you know, even though the outcome that we desire so much only happens when you keep it going
Yeah.
for an indefinite amount of
Well,
time.
and I think that's when you start getting into the life stuff, I think that's when you have to start thinking about, like, if you're going to keep doing something forever, for the next 40 years or whatever, it needs to become part of your identity in some way, and there needs to be some sort of, like, passion or emotion associated with it. You know, so it's, if you hate going to the gym, you can still make yourself go for a month or 3 months or 6 months.
For the typical 6 weeks in January.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the people who go for decades and get into incredible shape, it's usually because they found something that they're extremely passionate about within it, and they've implemented it into their identity. Like, they come to see themselves as, oh, I'm a fit person who cares about health.
Right.
And I have no idea how you induce that in people, like, or
So,
encourage
yeah,
that.
I think I know part of that.
Yeah.
Part of the pain, I think, in the beginning for something like riffing off of that example, it's especially if you have somebody who's completely unfit, you know, who's been
Yeah.
sedentary for a long time, overweight. Number one, they're terrified.
Yeah.
But also, there's no competence or confidence,
Yeah.
right? And my sense is that a couple things need to happen. One, you know, the confidence comes from competence with a
Yeah.
P, right? So the early days of changing behavior like that, you know, as a general rule, it sucks.
Yeah.
Because we're all
Right,
terrible at it.
right.
And it hurts, and we're stumbling, and we're embarrassed, and we have to be vulnerable, and it's uncomfortable, right? And at the same time, it's those who work through those early days to reach a level of competence where it starts to be fun.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, that's the turning point, because then instead of having to go, you want to go.
You're excited
and then
to go.
Instead of going for the minimum, like, required time, you're like,
Yeah.
how do I build it into my day to stay longer?
Yeah. Yeah. How are we doing on time? 5 minutes? Okay.
Yeah, so one of the unlock keys about this, I'm curious what your experience has been around this. So with everything we do, like Good Life Project, we pretty much always build community.
Yeah.
And the reason is because if I go back to BJ Fogg's model, you know, so he has a model on behavior change, which is that every behavior is a factor of 3 things: motivation, ability, and a trigger.
Yeah.
Right? So take the fitness example, right? So you got to be motivated to go and exercise 3 times a week. You got to have the ability to do it, and that
Yeah.
can be effective. So, and then you have to have a trigger, like there's a gym right there.
Right.
Join it.
Right.
Right? And most people focus on elevating the motivation side. My experience has been the single biggest change maker, the single biggest factor in somebody's sustained behavior long enough for it to become enjoyable and then become intrinsically motivated. And then, as you were saying, part of the identity is community.
Yeah.
You do it with a support of like-minded people.
And then you get CrossFit.
Right, the people actually doing it so much.
That they hurt their foot.
Yeah, but it's I mean, it's a testament to what people are actually willing to do when they feel like they're actually a part of something rather than just being forced to do an activity.
It's incredible. I mean, and I think the CrossFit model, and it's interesting. I'm seeing people in our industry start to gravitate towards that CrossFit model, and I think the most powerful part about that model is the community aspect. Yeah. It's not just the accountability that comes with it, but it's the sense of camaraderie. Yeah. It's the sense of like accomplishing something together, which, just coming back to full circle to like what actually makes a good life. Like ultimately, as humans, like we are social creatures. We need that acceptance. We need that camaraderie. We need that love.
Yeah, belonging.
Yeah, and so it's not enough to just know that like, oh, I have to do these 5 things to get a 6-pack. It's like you need to surround yourself with people who are on the same path, who are just as enthusiastic about it, and who you can support each other.
Yeah.
It's I'm excited and interested. I've experimented with communities in my own website, and it's been very hit and miss. I'm not sure. I mean, I know some of the old school self-help stuff like Landmark and Tony Robbins and stuff, like that's been their wheelhouse for a while now. I'm interested to see how it develops on the internet over the coming years.
It's really because we've been not just playing with it, we've been kind of going deep into community building since the beginning with Good Life Project. And coming into it, we thought we had 3 things to offer. One was ideas, so teachings, right?
Yeah.
One was teachers, and it wasn't just me. We put together faculty for what we do.
Yeah.
And one was community. And we thought of the most important, sort of like the teachings were the most important, the teacher the second, and community was number 3.
Yeah.
And now reflecting back on that, I think we got it completely backwards.
Really?
Yeah, the power of like-minded community, if it's formed well, if there's safety, if there's shared values, beliefs, and aspirations, like if it's built around the idea to elevate rather than denigrate, and there's an ethos that's actually, uplifting rather than bringing people down. It is the single biggest unlocky I've ever found.
Really? It's
one of the reasons we're focusing so much on it now and putting a lot of marbles into building our community bigger. It's not because it's just, to me, it's that powerful. And it's funny, like if I come full circle to Maslow's hierarchy, the 3rd thing in the hierarchy is belonging.
Right.
And I have this theory that I think it actually, in my mind, it would be better shaped like a diamond with belonging in the middle, and that being the root that radiates up and down. Yeah. Because belonging is at the heartbeat of survival too.
Yeah.
So it kind of ripples up and down.
Yeah.
So why don't we come full circle? I think
we've
been jamming with everybody
for,
I don't know, 3 days now. So, you and I can talk for a really long time, all this stuff.
It feels like we just started, honestly.
So, I don't know, if you were going to say there's a single thing that would be like the biggest lever to be able to wake up in the morning and then put your head on your pillow at night and say, that was a good day, what do you think it would be?
Oh, jeez. Simple question, right?
Just pick one.
Just pick one. What's the most important day-to-day thing you can ever do in your life?
And I feel like there is no single thing. I mean, that's cool too.
I'm not sure that there is. I don't know if it is that simple. I don't know. Do you have a stock answer for that?
I don't. I think about this constantly though, because I'm always given the question, like, what's the one thing that what's the one thing I can do that will make the biggest difference now? And so to me, belonging is maybe not like the thing that will make the biggest difference, but I think it's the biggest gap that a lot of people are suffering right now.
Yeah, I think there's something. I definitely think there's something to that whole idea that the internet is somehow, even though it's connecting us information-wise, it's disconnecting us in terms of empathy in a lot of ways. And I definitely think there's something to that. I mean, depression is on the way up. Feelings of loneliness, particularly among the older population, is on the way up.
Social
and
anxiety.
Social anxiety. And I think, I definitely think that's a big problem. And arguably, and I'm not using this ironically, it's probably the biggest first world problem. You know, it's once you've, going back to the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy, you know, once you've got like running water and, you know, not dodging bullets, like that's probably the most important thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I think before we wrap, we should actually speak to that though, because a lot of people who probably have, you know, like are in a position to be able to watch something like this, you know, or have that sort of self-talk in their head, like, well, but I don't have all of those like fundamental survival problems, so this is a quote first world problem.
Yeah,
which is a phrase that I hear a lot, and it gives me like
like you twitch a little bit.
Because it is it's those things that we label first world problems that very often are the things that lead to suicide.
Of course.
And to fierce anger and separation.
Yeah.
And they manifest in profound pain and suffering.
Yeah. It's funny. So you said you see Maslow's hierarchy more as like a diamond. I see it as like a
Jigsaw puzzle?
like a hexagram type thing where these things are all interrelated, because at least mentally, I've always kind of separated human needs into those three categories. So you have a need for like status and feeling important, you have a need for connection, love, belonging, and you have a need for just safety, security. And I don't know that any one of them is like de facto always the most important. I think that they influence each other heavily. Like you just pointed out, you know, people who feel lonely and disconnected, they become a danger to themselves. Their physical health deteriorates. You know, people who feel like they're not doing anything important, who they're not contributing anything or capable of doing anything, it ends up harming their social lives and other areas of their life. So I see it as like this, they're almost like they're in balance, you know? And if you ever get people overemphasizing one of them, you know, say putting all of their time and energy just into status and making a bunch of money or something, it also harms the other two. So it's this tenuous relationship between the three of them that always needs to be managed. And it's interesting, I mean, coming back to the experiences in the third world, I mean, one of the things that first worlders like us love so much, or makes the biggest impact on us, you know, if we go to Africa or Latin America or something, we see these people who are so poor and they live in countries that are dysfunctional, but they have such a strong sense of community, they have such strong family bonds, like, and they're incredibly happy too. Like they live very fruitful, invigorating lives, and I think that makes a big impression on us, and it's something that I think everybody who goes abroad and sees that always kind of comes home and is like, I need to remember that.
Yeah.
You know?
So true.
Yeah.
That traveling, I think that's one of the biggest reasons
Yeah.
you should travel.
Yeah.
So, why don't we wrap it up?
Sure.
Once again, this is
Mark Manson,
author of
Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and this is
Jonathan Fields, author of How to Live a Good Life. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us.
buy them together.
It's all set. Signing off. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.